Hi friends, Caitlin here with Sass and Stitch Crochet, and today I'll be walking you through a tutorial for the Paper Hearts blanket. This is a granny square motif style blanket where we'll be making solid granny squares and half granny squares to make these heart shapes. I would consider this an intermediate level pattern due to some of the color work and the assembly. So for this pattern, we'll be working with worsted weight yarn. I'm using Swish Worsted from We Crochet. You'll need it in at least 2 colors, but you can use more if you'd like. As you saw in my blanket, I have white as my main color, and then I've used 4 different colors for my hearts. So I am using Frosting, Blossom Heather, Rose Heather, and Conch. So those are the 4 colors I'm using along with the white. You're also going to need a 5mm crochet hook, a yarn needle, and a pair of scissors. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, the way I made my blanket is I made them in each of these little heart blocks individually, and then I'll be sewing all of my heart blocks together into a blanket. This just keeps it more manageable so that you're not having to sew across a long entire row of all these little squares. You can do one little heart at a time. You can keep track of what orientation you need all your squares in, and don't attach something in the wrong direction. Yeah, it just keeps it a lot more manageable. So for each heart block, it's a 5x5 square. We'll need to make 11 of your main color squares. So this is my white. I'll need 11 white squares. I'll need 6 full squares of my contrasting color, so my pink. And then I need 8 squares that are half and half. So I'm going to show you today how to do a full square and then how to do a half and half square. Let's go ahead and start with the full square first. Alright, so we'll be working granny squares. You can either use the magic circle method or you can do what I'm about to show you here. So you're going to start with a slip knot. So the way I like to do mine is I put my tail up at the top, put my index finger underneath, wrap it around 1 full time and another half time. Hold the 2 strands down here, bring the back loop to the front, and then bring this new back loop to the front and completely off your finger. So this makes a slip knot that you can adjust the size of. Put your hook in the loop and you're ready to get started. So if you're not doing the magic circle method, this is what you can do to start your circle instead. So you can start with a chain 4. So to make a chain, you yarn over from back to front and pull through the loop on your hook. Again, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through. That's a chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you're going to go back to this first chain that you made, insert your hook, and you're going to make a slip knot. So yarn over, and you're going to pull this new loop through both of the loops on your hook at the same time. Slip knot. This has created a little circle for you. If you pull your work apart, you find a circle in the middle, like that. That's where we're going to be working into for our first round. Okay. So to start the first round, we're going to chain 2. 1, 2. And then we're going to be working in double crochets. That's US double crochets. So yarn over, insert your hook into the middle of this hole here where my nail is popping through here. Insert. Yarn over and pull through the hole. Yarn over and pull through 2 of the loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops on your hook. That's a double crochet. We're going to do another one. Yarn over, insert into the middle of the circle. That should be easier to find now that you've worked into it once before already. Yarn over and pull through 1. So you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over and pull through 2. That's another double crochet. So far we have this starting chain 2 here. This is going to count as a double crochet. So we have the starting chain 2, another double crochet, and another. So we have 3 double crochet here. We're going to chain 1. This is going to be our corner. And now we're going to do another set of 3 double crochet. So yarn over,
insert into the middle circle, yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Do that again 2 more times. Okay, so now you can start to see this corner forming. You've got 2 sides of your square made so far. You got one side here, one side here. We're going to do another chain 1 for our next corner, and then we're going to do another set of 3 double crochet into the middle of the circle. 1, 2, 3. So now we've got 3 sides made. 1, 2, 3. We're going to do another chain 1, and we're going to work another 3 double crochet into the middle of the circle. 1, 2, and 3. So now we've made all 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, but so far we've only created 3 of our corners. See this space, this is what the chain created. This is our corner, so we've got 1, 2, 3 corners. We need to make our 4th corner and then close up our circle. So do another chain 1, and then we're back to this starting chain 2 right here. You want to put your hook into that top chain of the chain 2 here, and we're going to slip stitch. So yarn over and pull through both of the loops on your hook. This is what closes our work together to form a circle, or a square in this case. And that is round 1. Now we're going to do round 2. This is only a 2 round granny square, so this is our last round of this square. We're going to start by chaining 2, and again this is going to count as a double crochet. So because this counts as a double crochet, this is our double crochet that lines up with the chain 2 from the previous round. So we don't need to do anything else into this chain 2 right here, but we're going to double crochet into the next 2 stitches. So yarn over. Make sure you're inserting through both of the loops of that stitch, like that. Yarn over and pull through the stitch. Yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, we're going to double crochet into the next double crochet right here. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now we're at the corner here, and to make the square we have to add more stitches in this round than we did in the last round. So into this chain 1 corner you're going to go right into the hole, and we're going to do 2 double crochet. So yarn over, insert into the hole, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 1. Work another double crochet. And for now this completes our first side right here. So we're going to rotate our work to look at the next side. Now we're going to make our corner here. We always have to make a corner on every single round of a granny square. So we'll do our chain 1. And now on this side we are going to do another 2 double crochet into this chain 1 hole here. So working 2 more into this chain 1 hole. 1, 2. Now we have these 3 double crochet stitches from the previous round on this side. We're going to be working 1 into the top of each stitch. Now this first one here, because you've worked several double crochet into the chain 1 hole, sometimes this stitch can get a little covered up and you might miss it. So you want to be careful to kind of scoot those stitches over to reveal this stitch right here that you need to work into. So we're going to do double crochets in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Now we are reaching the next chain 1 corner, so we're going to start by doing 2 double crochet into that corner, This is still part of the same side that we're working on now. That's 2. And now we can make our chain 1 corner, rotate to the next side. We're going to do 2 more double crochet into this corner. 1, 2. Again, we're going to scoot those 2 stitches over so we can work 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Now we're at the next chain 1 corner, so we'll do 2 double crochet into the corner. And just so you can help yourself keep track, this round each side is going to have 7 double crochet stitches. So starting from this chain 1 corner over here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So each side will have 7 stitches. This first side, because we started not in the corner, it's going to have less, but we're going to finish that stitch count up when we get all the way back around our square. So this first full side should have 7, this next side we just did should have 7, the following side we're about to do will have 7, and then we'll finish up this first side that we worked on so that it has 7 total also. But for now, we just finished this side. We're going to make our chain 1 corner, rotate to the next side, and we're going to do the same thing again. So 2 double crochet into the corner, 3 double crochet across the top of the stitches from the previous round, and 2 double crochet in the next chain 1 corner. Okay, chain 1, and now we're on the last side again. So we've already done 5 stitches on this side. Starting from over here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means we just need to do the 2 extra double crochet in this corner. So we just did our chain 1 corner up here. We're going to do those last 2 double crochet. 1, 2, and that helps complete this last side. Alright, now you're going to locate the chain 2, your starting chain 2, and you're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 2. So insert, yarn over, and pull through both of the loops on your hook. Okay, now we can fasten off this square. So chain 1, pull out your work a little bit, and you want to leave a long enough tail that you can weave it in, but you don't need to leave any extra length for any reason. So this is about a good length for weaving in your tail. And there you have it. That is a full square. So again, for each heart block that we're making, you're going to need 11 full squares of your main color, so the white, and then you're going to need 6 full squares of your contrasting color. So if I were making this heart block in this colorway, that would be one of my full squares for here. I need 5 more of this color. So go ahead and make all your full squares, and then you can come back and we'll learn the half square together, which is what's going to help shape your heart. Okay, so for my half squares, I prefer to start with my main color, although it doesn't really matter, but I would suggest keeping it consistent every time just so that they're made exactly the same. So I'm going to start with my white, and then I'm going to introduce my contrasting color when I'm ready. So we're going to start this out the same way we did before, with either a magic circle or starting the circle with the chain method. So I like to do the chain 4 method. So I've got my slip knot, and I'm going to do my chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch to the starting chain to make my circle. Okay, and this is going to begin the same way as our full squares. We're going to start with a chain 2. Remember, this is going to count as our first double crochet. Alright, and then you're going to do 2 more double crochet for this side. 1, 2. So including the chain 2 here, we have a total of 3 double crochets so far for our first side. You're going to do your first chain 1 corner, and we're going to do 2 more double crochet. So go ahead and work 2 double crochet as normal. 1, 2. Now we're going to start our 3rd double crochet for this side, but at the very end of the stitch is when we're going to be changing colors. So just watch closely as I work this double crochet here. So I'm going to do my yarn over, insert, yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2, but then don't do the last step of this stitch. So you're going to drop your white yarn, and you're going to pick up your contrasting color yarn, and you're going to drape this on your hook. You want to make sure you're leaving enough of a tail that you can weave it in later at the end. So you're going to put that contrasting color on your hook, and then you're going to use this new color to pull through the last 2 loops of that last stitch. So your new color is completing the last stitch. Now it's going to be a little tricky while you're establishing the new color. Things might get a little bit loose, so just try to keep things nice and tight. Not too tight, but not too loose. So now you have the contrasting color tail, you have your white tail, and you have your white strand. You're going to leave your white strand attached. Don't cut it off. You want to take all of these tails and just kind of lay them over your circle, so that when you're working your next double crochets, you'll bring all of these strands along with you for the rest of this round. This will just help keep all of your ends secured. So I'm going to chain 1. This is for my chain 1 corner. And again, I'm going to be laying all of these 3 tails across so that I can work into them as well. I'm going to do 3 double crochet with my new color. So insert. Make sure you're grabbing all of these tails with you too. These are just going to get lumped into the middle of the circle. Yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Alright, again we're going to be doing 3 double crochet with this new color, so that's 2 double crochet and 3 double crochet. Alright, chain 1 for your corner. And now you're going to do your last side. We're going to do this the same that we did right here when we traded colors. We're going to start with 2 normal double crochet. 1, 2. And on the 3rd double crochet is when you're going to be swapping back to the white at the very end. So do your yarn over, insert in the hole, yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2. And at this point, you're going to drop your contrasting color. And remember how we left the white yarn still attached. You're going to find your strand of white yarn, and you're going to use this one to complete your stitch. Yarn over. Okay, do your last chain 1 corner, and now we have all 4 sides now. We're going to slip stitch to the starting chain 2 here to close out our circle. When we do this, so go ahead and insert into that starting chain 2, and then we want to continue carrying along this contrasting color strand with us, because we dropped it here, but we're going to need it again when we get back over here. So we have to bring this strand along with us all the way across our white. So I've inserted into that chain 2 to make my slip stitch, but before we do it, I want you to drape the contrasting color on your hook as if it's a part of this stitch. And then you can do your yarn over, and you're going to pull through everything on your hook. So by draping that contrasting over, we have looped it right here. We've secured it with us, so it's going to come along our new round with us. Okay, so now we're ready for the second round. So we're going to chain 2, and again you're going to be carrying along this contrasting color with you. So every time you work a double crochet, this is going to be included on your hook as well. So I'm going to be working my 2 double crochet into these 2 stitches here. So insert into the stitch with my contrasting color draped on my hook too, and work my double crochet, and then double crochet in the next stitch. So that's my first 3 with the chain 2 and the 2 double crochet. Now I'm at the chain 1 corner here, so we need to work those 2 double crochet into the corner. 1, 2. Okay, work my chain 1 corner and turn to the next side. Now I'll do my next set of 2 double crochet. Again, I'm still bringing that contrasting strand along with me. It's run through the back of my work all along that first side, and it's going to continue that all the way until I get to that color again. So I'm doing my 2 double crochet in the corner, and then I can do my 3 double crochet across the last round. And then now I'm going to do my 2 double crochet on the corner, and this is where we're going to swap colors. So do 1 double crochet as normal, and then this is the last double crochet of this side before we switch. So this is when we're going to be doing our color change. So yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, and at this point when you have 2 loops left on your hook, you can drop the white, pick up the contrasting color, and you want to give it just a little bit of a pull just to make sure you're not leaving the strand too loose on what you've pulled it through. And you can complete your last stitch here with your contrasting color. And now we're going to be continuing to carry our white strand along with us because we're going to need it at the very end in this corner down here. So you've got to bring your white along with you too. Okay, so we just did our last double crochet. We're going to chain 1 with our new color here, and then we'll do our 2 double crochet in the corner. 1, 2. Make sure you scoot those stitches over so you can find that one that might be hiding. Double crochet across this row, this round. Okay, I'm at the corner again, so I'll do those 2 double crochet. 1, 2, and I'm not changing any color yet because I'm in the middle of my contrasting, so I don't need to do anything special with the white yet. I'll do my chain 1. I'll do my first 2 double crochet in the corner. 1, 2, and then the 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3. Right, now I'm at the chain 1 corner. Don't forget to do your next 2 double crochet in the corner with your same color. I know it can feel like you're ready to switch because this lines up with the row previous, but remember you have to do your 2 double crochet first. And on this last double crochet is when you don't finish your stitch. This is your last one before the color change. So you're going to drop your contrasting color, pick up your main color again, and complete the stitch with the white. Now you can make your chain 1 corner. Oh, and I forgot to mention, hold on, give your white a little bit of a tug again, not too much, just a little, to make sure it's nice and snug in there. Now you can use your white. Make your chain 1 corner, and we're going to do our 2 double crochet in the corner here, and then we can slip stitch to the starting chain 2, and this time we don't need to carry along the contrasting color because we're finishing up the square now. So you can just do a regular slip stitch here at the end. Alright, and then you can fasten off this square. And there you go, that is your half and half square. So for each of your heart flock motifs, you need 8 of these half and halves. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So go ahead and work all of your squares for one of your heart blocks. I'll put this on the screen again. You can take a screenshot if you want to. That way you can visualize it a little bit better. Again, you're going to need 11 of your main color. You need 6 of your contrasting color. and then you need 8 half and half blocks. So it'll be a total of 25 squares. Once you have all of those ready, we're going to come back and start sewing up our squares together. Okay, so one other thing to note before you get started with sewing together is I recommend taking all of your squares and at least weaving in this end that was on the last round of your granny square. You don't have to do all the ends necessarily right now. If you're like me, you hate weaving in ends, but at least doing the one end on the very outside edge will make it a lot easier to sew all your squares together because this end isn't going to be in your way anymore. So normally I am a big advocate for just weaving in all the ends at the end, but this is one where I will actually take the time and do this first. So I would recommend go ahead and doing that. And then we can get to laying out all your squares into our block. Now, as you get more comfortable understanding the layout of the blocks as you work more, you should be able to do this just row by row. You shouldn't have to lay up all that before you get started, but it might be helpful to do it for the first one. So the first row of the block, you've got 5 of your main color across the top. And then for the next row, we're starting with some of our half blocks. So we've got 1 point of the heart, and then we'll make the second point of the heart, and then we've got another white at the end. This whole end column is going to be all white as well. The next row, we've got 4 solids and a white on the end. The next row, we're starting the down angle of our heart. So we've got an angle, a solid, and an angle with a white. And then that leaves everything else for the last row. Move this down. So we'll end with a white solid in the corner, an angle, and then white, white. So first we'll be sewing all of the rows together. So we'll do this pairing, we'll do this row, and then we'll add on this row, this one, and this one until we have something that resembles this. So I have all the rows attached together, but none of the columns yet. Then we'll go back and we'll do all of the columns after that. And then we'll have our completed block, at least all sewn together. Then you have this mess to deal with at the end, but you know, we'll save that for when we need to later. Okay. So if you're right-handed, you're going to work right to left. If you're left-handed, you'll work left to right. So you can just go ahead, whichever hand you are, go ahead and pick up your first 2 squares of this seam line that you're going to be making here. Actually, before you do that, you're going to go ahead and take your the yarn that you're going to seam with. Now you can use either the main color or the contrasting color. I'm going to use white for the first row. I'm going to measure out how long I need my seaming strand to be. So you want it to be 2.5 times the length of what you're about to seam. So that's 1 times the length. This is 2 times the length. And then approximately another half. So about right there. And then you're going to attach your yarn needle. Just thread your yarn through the needle. And then I do tie just a single knot to help it stay in place. Okay, now you're ready to pick up the first 2 squares. I'm doing this seam line across first. So I'm going to start over here with these 2. And I'm going to move all these out of my way so my camera does not try to change the focus on me. Okay, so we're going to be working the mattress stitch, which, like I said, creates a near completely invisible seam. So I like to start on the bottom square. And you're just going to hold them face up. and you're only going to be working into the back loops, or otherwise in this case it would be the bottom loops of each of the stitches. So like if you're looking at this one, these are going to be the front loops or the top loops, and these are the back bottom loops. This one you've got the top front loops, and then these are the back bottom loops. So you only want to be working into those bottom loops. So starting in the chain one corner, this is the corner stitch. I'm going to put my yarn needle down, picking up that back loop, and I'm going to come up through the next back loop like this. Pull all the way through until you leave just a little bit of a tail, enough that you can weave in at the end. Okay, I'm skipping ahead just a moment to make a correction to my instructions. Now that I've worked my whole pattern, I have some better tips to offer here for the seaming. So when you start seaming and you're leaving this tail, I want you to leave at least a 10-inch tail along this right side on each of your rows, because what we're going to do is, once you've decided your layout for all of your color heart blocks, once you decide where they're going to go, where they'll be placed, the ones along the very right edge of the blanket are going to be given an extra row here, an extra column here of white squares to complete the proper margin of the blanket layout, if that makes sense. So that way you're not ending on an awkward like cut off edge here. You're completing that last edge along just the right side of your blanket. So especially if you don't know what color layout you're going to do yet, go ahead and make sure you're leaving like a 10-inch strip right here along the right side. If you need to cut when you're cutting this strand of yarn to prepare for seaming, if you need to cut it a little bit longer to compensate for that, you can go ahead and do that. The other thing to do in consideration when you go back to seam up this way, you also want to leave a 10-inch strip along the bottom edge as well, because we're going to be adding an extra margin row to the bottom after the fact as well. So this, leaving it longer like this, will help you be able to just use this string to sew on these squares here after the fact, rather than having to attach a whole new strand, having more ends to weave in. It just makes it a lot more complicated. It's easier if you can just use this leftover strand here that you already have attached. So I know this doesn't really make sense. It will make sense more later in the video, but this is the tip that I have for you here. Then we're going to do the same thing on the top square. So you'll locate the chain one corner, and you're going to go down into that back loop and then up into the stitch, the next back loop of the next stitch, and pull that through. Alright, now we're going to come back to this bottom square, and you see how my thread is coming out of this first stitch here. This is the first double crochet. My thread is coming out of here. You want to go back down into that loop, and then you're going to come up and out of the loop on the next stitch. So again, you're only going to be working into that back loop. Pull your yarn through, and you don't have to pull it completely tight, because the stitch, when you pull at the very end, it will stitch everything very tightly together. So I'm just leaving mine a little bit loose. That's actually better, because you can see where you've just worked into a little bit easier. So I recommend not pulling it too tight right now. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing on the top. Our last thread is coming out of this stitch here. So we're going to go back down into that same stitch and up through the next stitch. We're going to continue zigzagging all the way across until we get to the corner at the end. So I'll do it together with you one more time. We're going to go down into this one here and up through the next stitch. Down into this one here and up through the next stitch. Continue working across this seam line of these two squares, and I will show you what to do when we get to the corners. Okay, so here's what it's looking like so far. Again, we've got all this extra space, but that's going to go away when we give it a tug in just a moment. You can do that anytime you want to, but I'm just going to finish up this corner first. So we have to work into the corner at the end of the set of squares as well. So I've just come out of this last double crochet, so I need to go back down into it, and I'll come out in the chain one corner back loop. And the same for the top square. We started on the bottom square over here, so that means we need to end on the top square over here. So down and up through that chain one corner. Now the fun part is you can give both sides a little bit of a tug, and it's going to completely cinch your two squares together so that you don't see that seam line at all. Okay, so then we're going to continue across this row. So you're going to grab your next set of squares that you've laid out. So the next two are going to look like this. And we're going to essentially do that same thing again. You connect squares the same way you started over here. You just go down through that chain one corner. I start on the bottom square. If you've ended on the top square, you're going to start on the following bottom square. It's always the alternate. So down through that chain one corner on here, and then up through the first stitch, still working in those back loops. And then same on the top square, down through the chain one corner, and up through the next stitch. And you'll keep doing that same thing all the way across. Now, I'll show you one thing real quick. This is a good opportunity to show you. You will eventually have a square where you have to work on the join, the slip stitch join, along this side, and it can be a little bit confusing, especially having woven in your ends. It can look just like a little bump, like a bulb right here. So I personally, I just look for, so this is the starting chain 2 of that row, and this is the slip stitch to connect that round. So I'm going to find that slip stitch right before this little bulb here where I started to weave in my end. I'm going to go down through there, and then you'll come out going up through this next stitch. So it'll be just a little bit awkward, but you'll get more comfortable with that as you do that more. And then you'll just keep going as normal. So I'll go to the end of this set of squares with you again, just to show you the ending, and then I'll let you finish off the rest of the row by yourself. So I've just got a couple more stitches to do until the end. So, okay. I've worked through all of the regular stitches. Now I have still one more to do with the chain one corners. So I'm going back down into that last double crochet, up through the chain one corner, and then same on the top one, up through the corner. And then you can do the fun part of cinching. So what I do when I'm cinching any subsequent pairs of squares is I just kind of like hold it right here near the corner, and I'll cinch. I don't want to cinch it too tight, so I just kind of wait until they start cinching together. They are going to overlap a little bit, and they're going to get cleaned up once you cinch. Once you sew the columns, they're going to all kind of flatten out. But you just want to make sure that you're not cinching so much that it gets bunched up here like this. You don't want your square to get bunchy. So if that happens, you can just kind of readjust, pull that square back apart again. And then there you go. So yes, they are going to overlap just a little bit. It's going to look a little wonky. Like this one here, where I have all of the rows sewn but none of the columns. They're all just kind of overlapping on each other, but once I sew these together, they'll lay more appropriately flat. So, okay, so continue working across this row until you have the full 5 sets across, and you're going to finish the column the exact same way that you finished, or you'll finish the last pair of squares the same way you've been finishing these already. You're just going to do the last 2 corners and then just snip off your yarn enough to weave in the tail, and that's it. We're not going to fasten it off completely yet because we'll be attaching these squares to other squares later on in the blanket, so you want to leave this kind of like open and available still to work into these corners without them being completely like fastened off yet, if that makes sense. So you'll just kind of leave it kind of open and raw like this. And yeah, so continue on with this first seaming row. I'm going to finish it up real quick off camera, and then I'll help you get started with getting the next row attached, and then I'll let you finish doing all of the rows on your own. Okay, so I've got my first set of rows fully attached, and yes, like I said, it's going to look wonky. Mine does too, so that's completely normal. They should be overlapping just a little bit. Okay, so then it's going to be just the same process from here on out for attaching all of your rows. Now, when we do go to do the columns, you will want to tune in for that part because the corners are going to behave differently when we do the columns. But as far as all the rows go, if you're comfortable from this point on, you can be free to just go ahead and attach all the rows together on your own. But I'll go ahead and walk you through the process one more time, just getting started. So this is my next pairing. I have these 2 to sew together across this row. I will measure out my yarn. So you're going to measure 2.5 times the length of what you're going to be sewing together, and then you'll attach that to your yarn needle. Alright, so again, starting in the corner here, we're going to go down into the chain 1 corner and up out of the next stitch. Pull that through until you have just enough to weave in your end. I usually leave just like a little bit short of how much would be enough. And then this one is already established on our work, but the same goes. We're going to go down into this chain 1 corner here and up through the first stitch like that, and pull through. Sometimes this tail gets in the way a little bit, and then you'll just continue on just like you did before. So going through the next stitch, down and up through the next stitch. So at this point I feel confident that you have all the information needed to attach all your rows. Once you do that, you can meet me back here and we're going to go over how to seam up the columns. Okay, so I have all 25 of my blocks attached in their rows. Columns are still loose, so we need to do that next. It doesn't really matter which way you go. You can either go from top to bottom or you can go from bottom to top. I usually just turn it this way, but it does not make any difference whatsoever. And okay, so it starts out the same way with needing 2.5 times the length of what you're about to sew. Okay. And we're going to be starting off the same way. The basic premise of starting the squares and working through the squares is the same. It's just when we get to the corners that we're going to be doing something very different than we did before, and this is what helps it keep your seam line as invisible as possible. So you want to make sure to stop and pay attention for that part. But for now we're going to start the same way that we have been, going down through the chain 1 corner and up. And then down through the chain 1 corner and up. And you'll keep working the mattress stitch until you've worked through the last stitch. Make sure you pause before you've touched any of the corner loops right here. You don't want to do you don't want to work into any of the corner loops the same way we did last time. Okay, so I've worked all the way up to the corner. I'm coming out of this stitch here, and this first red loop is the corner, so I haven't worked into the corner yet. You want to go ahead and cinch up the work you've done so far now before you do the corner. And this is a great example of how any color yarn will still create an invisible seam. I used red, and you cannot even tell that it's there other than the yarn ends. Pretty neat. Okay, now we're going to do the corners. So we've ended coming out from this top square here. We're going to transition into doing this corner right next to it. We don't want to cross down or go back down here. We want to go right next door. So this time, instead of working in the bottom, the back loops, you want to work into the top loops. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around from this way, and I want to pick up the top loop of that chain one corner of this square here. I'm going to pull that through. Then I'm going to come down. So we're making a counterclockwise motion here. So we've gone from here to here. This is our first corner that we've done. Then we're going to do this corner here in the same way. You're going to go from the square towards the corner into that top loop. Then we're going to do this square here from the square towards the corner into that top loop of the chain one corner. And then lastly, the same on this square, because we haven't done this corner yet. So it's might be a little bit tricky to find. What I recommend is finding that set of 4 double crochet in the corner, pulling them apart, and there is your corner stitch here. So just through the top loop, pull, and then you can pull and cinch up this corner. This is going to give yourself a really, really secure corner. Okay, so now we continue on with our regular zigzag. So we ended on this one, so we're starting on this one, and we'll do our regular zigzag again like this. Now this time we do have to find those bottom loops of the corners. We're continuing on as if we didn't even do this whole corner thing that we just did. So we still want to kind of dig under our work and re-find that bottom loop of this chain one corner here. So this is the top, this is the first regular stitch, so the corner is right here, and this is the bottom loop. So we want to kind of rescue that again and then come up in the next stitch as normal. And then the same thing here, we want to try to find that bottom corner loop. In this square, the corner is made with white, so I'm going to dig until I find that bottom corner loop. And honestly, if you get some random other strand down there, that's okay too. The most important part is you don't want to skip right into starting with this stitch and coming out of the next stitch, because you're skipping this whole spot if you do that. So you kind of just want to find a spot to get started right at the corner so that you can come up and out of the next stitch like we normally do. Okay, then you're going to continue the same thing we've been doing all the way across this set of stitches, continuing to work in just the bottom loops. This one is going to be a little bit trickier because you kind of have to like open up your seam to find those bottom stitches again, since the rows are sewn together. Okay, I've just worked through, and so I need to cinch my seam line. You want to do this before you do the whole 4 square thing, because that will kind of almost like create a knot where you can't cinch it anymore after you get to that point. So you want to make sure you cinch your last square before you do the 4 corner thing. Okay, so I've ended coming out from this square. So again, we're going to go clockwise order. We're going to go right next door, and from the square towards the corner, you're going to just pick up that top loop of the corner, and then you're going to go down to this square and do the same thing from square pointed to the corner, pick up that top loop. Now this square, pick up the top loop of that corner. And then lastly, this square up here, pick up the top loop of this corner. And then you can pull and make the corner cinched together. And then I'll show you how to begin the next set of squares one more time, and then I think you'll be good to go after that. So again, you kind of want to dig out that bottom loop of that chain one corner. It's going to be right here. I know this red yarn is not showing much definition on the camera, but if you'll just follow what I'm, do as I say and not as I do. How about that? Okay, so I did that square. Now I need to find a bottom loop of this square. And again, you don't have to worry about if you're really getting the bottom loop or not. Just kind of pick up something down there in the corner so that you can come up through the next stitch. So you will do these instructions for all of the columns. And the same thing when you get to the end, you're just kind of going to, when you get to the corners of the end of this column, you're going to do it the same as you did at the start, just the standard way that we did earlier on. You'll just kind of go through the last stitch and then up through the bottom loop of that corner. And then the same thing, you'll go up through the bottom loop of this corner. You're not going to do anything fancy with these corners because these might be attached to other things that we want to not leave this like locked up that we can't access anymore, if that makes sense. So you can go ahead and finish up this block, and then you can go ahead and do all of the blocks that you want to make for your blanket. I'm going to, I think I'll be making a at least a 4x4, if not a 4x5. So like 4 of these heart blocks across by 4 of these heart blocks down. So I'm going to need 20 of these heart blocks, either 16 or 20, I haven't decided yet. So I'm going to go ahead and make all of my heart blocks, get them all sewn together in their individual little blocks, and then we'll come back and we'll sew all of the big blocks together into the blanket. So I ended up just doing 9 squares for my blanket. It's going to be like a baby blanket size. So this is what it's looking like so far. So once you've made all of your blocks, which just a reminder, each block looks like this with the heart on the edge and along the bottom edge. You've got a margin on the top and the left side. Once you've made all your blocks and you've decided on your order, then we need to go back and add a line margin along the right side of the blanket. So you'll see I've added an extra column on this square and this square. I haven't done this one yet, so this is the difference. This is what it looks like. So adding this margin here on the right side will help complete the whole picture of your blanket. That way you don't just end the edge on this awkward, unfinished edge here. We're also going to be adding a margin on the very bottom edge. So you know how we have a row of white squares along the very top edge? We're going to be going back and adding that along the very bottom edge as well. So once you've got your order laid out how you want to display your hearts, go ahead and add that right line, and then go ahead and add that bottom line to those squares individually. I think it's easier to add them individually, so you're not having to, rather than attaching all your blocks and then adding this whole solid line, it's just longer that you have to seam and hold and maneuver. I prefer to add them on each block, and then I'm going to attach all my blocks together, which we'll get back to in a moment. Okay, so just real quick, this is the square that I still need to add the right side margin to. So I'm just going to briefly show you how I'm setting this up to add on each of these squares, because I worked from right to left. And I have this string attached here. Like I mentioned, you want to leave kind of a long string to just use this tail. So what I'm doing is I am turning my heart block upside down so that I can put this attached tail on my right side and work right to left. And the great thing about this is it's already set up the same exact way that we were adding blocks for the regular block, is that this tail is on the top square. So when I go to attach my yarn needle, And just so you know, I did not leave my tails long enough because I learned as I went, and that's what I'm saving you from. So this tail, you should have a tail longer than this, but this is just, I'm going to just show you real quick. When I go to attach my yarn needle, it's already set up for me on the top square, and I can just continue right into the following bottom square, just like we did when we were attaching squares to the main block. So do that in the corner, bring in my next square, and do the same thing down and up through the corner, and just continue on across. Now I'm going to go ahead and work this part off camera, and then I'll show you what I'm doing when I get to the end here. Okay, so I've worked all the way through the end, and I've gone through both the bottom corner and the top corner. Now I'm just going to go ahead and weave into this end from here, since I'm already right here, and I know that this block is going to be on the edge, so I'm not going to be doing anything else with this set of corners for the rest of the blanket. Unless I add a border, which I have not gotten to yet. You're getting a little bit of a sneak of my design process. I just kind of work as I go. I don't always have the plan fully fleshed out as I'm working, but I figure it out along the way. Okay, but anyway, so I'm going to go, so I've ended in the top corner. I'm going to just go back down through the corner on the bottom. I'm going to go back down through the corner on the bottom square. And then don't pull it completely tight all the way yet. You want to leave a little bit of a loop right here. And then I'm going to go back from right to left through that loop again. And this is going to kind of help me make a knot here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and flip to the back and weave in this end and be done with it. Okay. So you'll continue doing this for each of these squares down this column, and then when you've got the whole column, you can go ahead and sew this the same way we did before. That doesn't change when you add this strip here. Now, kind of the same instructions for the squares that need the bottom margin added, which this is a square that is getting the side and the bottom, because this one is in the corner, the right corner of my blanket. Kind of the same thing. Hopefully you'll have left this tail long enough. Normally I was working this way from right to left, but the same thing, I'm going to turn it around to the other side so that I can face it this direction and work this way. Now, when you're adding the margin along the right side, your instinct might be to go ahead and attach all 5 squares first and then do the cross hatching. The reason I'm doing the short seaming first and then going this way is because that's the same order I did when I completed my block. I did all of the rows first and then I went back and did the columns. So I just want to keep it consistent so that these corners don't look any different than the other corners. I really don't think you would notice, but that's just my preference. So that's why I'm doing the short sides first. But when I go back and add the bottom margin, it's actually going to be opposite, because this is adding a whole nother row here. So I would actually, I think for the bottom, I will actually go ahead and attach all 5 squares this way, and then I would go back and sew up the short sides individually after that. So go ahead and do those for all of the squares necessary, and then we will sew all of our blocks together. Okay, so I've got the first 2 rows of blocks set up for my blanket. Just the same as we did each block construction, I'm going to do the rows first. So I'll do this row, and then I'll come down here and attach the 3rd row. And then once I have all the rows together, I will go back and I will do the columns in the same direction that I did before. So we're going to be starting over here, working our way to the left. So for now, I'm just going to scoot these blocks out of my way, And we're going to move these over because this is what we're going to be starting with. Okay, so we'll be starting this the same way we have for all of our rows. Remember, you're still going to need 2.5 times the full length of what your blanket is across all 3 or however many squares you have across. So you're going to have a lot more yarn to manage this time. It might be a little bit trickier, but it's easier to have a consecutive piece than attaching longer lengths later on. So we're just going to get started in this corner in the same way, just starting in the bottom square, pulling it all the way through. It will take longer just because of time spent pulling the yarn tail through. Alright, and then going in through the top, and you'll continue as normal. One other tip that I have before you get started with sewing is to not weave in all of your ends. I know it looks crazy messy, and for some people that might drive you crazy, but particularly on the edges, my worry about weaving in ends is that it's going to kind of tie off that corner for you, and you still need to be able to work into all of these corner stitches. So for me, it's safer for me to not touch these ends so I don't block myself off from working into anything and making it look weirder later on, if that makes sense. So if you can manage waiting, I would at least save all of the yarn tails along the edges out, and then you can weave them in after the fact. Okay, so I've sewn together the first set of squares. I haven't touched any of the corners yet. We are going to do something different with this corner than the other just rows across. This is going to be kind of a combo of working into the bottom loops and working into the top loops like we did when we did our columns, because this is the only time we are coming into this stitch juncture right here, whereas previously, on the squares, we worked this way and then we worked this way. Each corner got hit twice, each connection. But this time, this is the only time that these corners are going to be all joined together right here. So we just need to do a little bit better securement the first time around, since we don't have 2 times to go through it. So I haven't touched any of the corners yet. I am going to work down through my last stitch and up through my corner, the bottom loop of the corner. And then the same thing on the top square. Now I'm going to do the same method I did where I go all the way around into each of the top loops of the corners. So starting with this top one over here, I'm going to go through the top loop, and then this one, then this one, and then back to the starting one. So it's kind of like we're double securing this corner all in one go. Tie it tight, and it looks the same as every other corner that we've done. And then we can keep going. So the same thing as when we did the columns, you have to kind of dig underneath this connection for that bottom loop of the corner, and then going up through the first stitch. Same thing on the top. You want to find the bottom loop of that corner, which may be even more difficult now that we've already worked into these corner loops once before already. But it is what it is. So, okay. And then you'll just continue across in the same way. You'll do this corner method and this seaming method all the way across here. When you get to the juncture between this first set and this next set of blocks, you don't want to do the around the corners join right here, because we are going to pass through this again when we sew up the column. So this time when you get to the corners here, you only want to go through the bottom loop. So bottom loop, bottom loop, bottom loop, bottom loop, just the same as we were when we were doing our rows. you don't want to do the around the clock top loops on these junctures in between your blocks, if that makes sense. Doing the around the clock method kind of just all consumes that corner, and you can't really work into it again, or at least I have a hard time working into it again and making it look clean and seamless like all the other corners. The point of this sewing method is to make this look like it was assembled in one big blanket, not into individual blocks. So that's what I recommend doing for these corners in between blocks here. So go ahead and work all the way across your first row, and then you can scoot your work up and you can add on the next row and work all the way across. And then I will meet you back and we will work on our columns together. So it wasn't until I was editing this video just now that I realized I completely lied to you. I was supposed to come back and work on the column seaming with you, but I already went ahead and did that and my blanket is finished. I'm just going to show you and walk you through what I did. It's not really any different than what we've done before. So I feel like you could do this on your own, but I will walk you through it for a moment here. So just the same as when I made the blocks, I am sewing the columns up this way from the bottom to the top. Like I said earlier, I want to keep the same orientation with my sewing as much as possible, just to make all of the lines look as similar as they can be. So my join line is right here. I did the same exact thing by starting in the bottom loops of the corner, working my square the same way we have, and then on these corners all the way up the columns I was doing both the bottom corner method and the around the clock method for each of these corners. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, when we were doing our rows and doing the row seams in between the blocks, that was the only time we were interacting with some of these corners. And the same goes for here between this block and this block. This is the only time we're interacting with this corner again, so it has to be done very securely with both the bottom loop method and the around the clock method. So I trust that you know what you're doing by this point, and you can go ahead and do that all the way up your blanket. And then once you're done with that, you have permission to weave in all your ends. And I am not adding a border like I mentioned earlier in the video. So we kind of leave this kind of cute little scallopy border, just the natural edge of the granny squares. I think it's kind of cute. You can add a border if you want to, but I'm choosing to go plain and simple this time. I hope you guys enjoyed this pattern. I know this was a lot of information, a very long video for such a simple pattern, but I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'm excited to make more motif style blankets in this style with these granny squares and the half and halves, creating a design. I think it's such a classic like quilt style, which I really love, and so I hope to bring this to more of my designs. If you have any ideas or something you would like to see from me with this similar style in mind, please leave it in the comments. I would love to know, and we can plan for that for future pattern releases. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you guys have a great day.